Three. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Richard Bernardo. I am the editor of the journal, the Scope Journal, Scope Long Island Journal, for our leadership and instruction. It's a publication that is out on EBSCO as well as on ERIC. That has been used internationally, actually, as sources of research on any number of topics, for the most part applying to education specifically, but also to other ripple effects that you might expect. Obviously, if we start talking about education, it will ripple lots of other places as well, won't it? And so we've had some nice conversations about articles and research from all corners of the world, quite frankly, we're proud to say. And so one thing we do that I don't know whether other scholarly journals will do, which is these podcasts or vlogs, I guess is a better way to describe them, where we invite the authors to come up and speak to us about the implications of their article or research that they did, with the deeper motive, quite frankly, is to motivate the listeners, the viewers, to consider how they might want to write their own article with us. And we'll certainly be glad to hear from anybody who has that kind of interest. This is a little different, this particular podcast. It's the first time we've ever had two authors from two different articles, an author from each of two different articles. And what we did was, strictly by coincidence, is ask Molly Healy and Dr. Michael Liu, and they'll introduce themselves to you more specifically in a moment, whose topics are not mirrored by any shape or form, but whose ideas and themes intersect with each other. And we don't know where this is going to go today. I have some thoughts about it, and I think they do too. So without me yapping any much more than that, let's move on. Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself, please. We'll start with that, and then we'll go to Molly, and then we'll go back to Molly and say, Molly, explain your article, and we'll go back to Michael, and I'll have you explain the article, and then we'll see where that goes. All right, go ahead, Michael.
All right. Thank you again, Professor Bernardo. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael. I was born and raised in Taiwan, and I came to the States about almost 13 years ago as an international student. My background had been in the performing arts as a performer, administrative staff, and fundraiser. Later, in the past maybe 5 or 6 years, I got into teaching and academics, and I've been teaching both Chinese culture and heritage, and as well as Asian American history in a community college. And my personal interest in terms of research is about how to bring arts and culture, these two big concepts, and marry them together. So glad to be here.
Thank you. Ms. Healy?
Great. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Healy. I'm a recent graduate of Elon University, where I studied journalism, specifically looking at global events and representation, as well as history within media. So specifically journal articles, different kinds of television media, which led me to conducting this research my senior year. It was my senior year thesis. I did research on Chinese representation within Saturday Night Live. So long-running television show, sketch comedy show that dates back to I'm gonna get the year wrong. It's been about 48 years. I think it's 1977. And so looking at that footage of the 4 Chinese hosts who have ever hosted SNL, mind you, there's over 600 hosts ever. So the only 4 Chinese hosts, I looked at each of their episodes and looked at how those characters were portrayed, what characters were they playing, what were they talking about in their monologue, how was comedy used, basically just dissecting the entire episode. There wasn't enough episodes to be able to draw hardline, conclusive results, but we did see these growing trends, and you could see a lot of trends in media reflected within these episodes. So
Yeah, that issue of trends in media, and insofar as how that affects perhaps instruction and schooling, is some things I want to keep out in front of the both of us. Michael, what were your chief findings in yours? I don't recall it. You spoke to that a moment ago.
Sure. I didn't actually talk about the research that I submitted and thankfully got published uh, in the journal. It's basically about how I took a shift from centering what was my research area about arts education, arts integration, and cultural competence, and I use that framework and bring that into my personal sort of not really personal, but professional academic reflection on how I had been able to use anti-racist pedagogy in the teaching of my course, which is a very um, racially targeted culture subject. So my finding in the article was primarily about, yes, I wanted to teach with the idea of anti-racist pedagogy, but then I also looked into in this article how my use of art or artist experience have impacted in any way my students' learning experience as well as my teaching experience. For the most part, things were positive, but there are also some outliners, which is always what draws me. So, yeah.
Tell us about those outliers.
Outliers would be, for example, when we talk about art and creativity, most people would go out and say, yeah, it's always good, it's always beneficial, it always will be impactful. However, as we get an opportunity to look into each cases, what the outliers presented was, yeah, something that was working for the most of my students might not work for one or two persons. So that's when I as an educator can look into why does it work or why does it not work, and how can I as an educator took that experience and move forward, either as someone who is so interested in art in general, and as an educator to reinforce the utilization of art so that every student can still feel included. Not that, okay, I'm using this art, but you don't get that, that's not your fault. And how do we then move forward to figure out more ways or different ways so that when we think we're using this magical or transformative tools, which we know as art, can really have the effect that we think it should have. Yeah.
The issue of art and your choice of the art sources that you use with your students. Also, it's kind of reminds me of, in a loose kind of way, to what Molly is driving at. Does that make sense, Molly? I'm not sure if it does. You can say it makes.
Yeah. No, I think it does. Was thinking about this as you were talking, Michael. This is going back to my dance days, not even my research. But somebody had told me once how when you watch or like an art piece, a dance piece, anything, you shouldn't be looking to see if you like it or not. You should be looking just for what you see, and then that's your response. Your response is what you're seeing because it's based on your own life experience. And basically, like the way we interpret art is like that's valuable. It's not valuable. It is valuable if you like it or not, but it's more important like how you're perceiving it and what you're seeing and how that's important. And so you're kind of touching on that a little bit, and it reminded me of my piece of me and Dr. Bernardo had talked about this before of how even between me and my other researcher, the amount of different things we pulled out of it and references we caught and different things. I just think it's amazing like how different everyone can see the same piece of artwork and how differently you can interact with it and how differently you can be affected emotionally. Some people could see something and just be like, yeah, whatever. And other people, they'll remember it for the rest of their lives.
Well said. That's exactly what I had to as my research or academic um, obligation to
Yeah.
really look into how arts can or should have any impact when it's used.
It's interesting because I'm thinking of the subject of the art, and I'm pointing at you, like I got you. I'm thinking about the subject of art, who were in the arts, I should say. In your case, he was talking about Chinese immigrants, right, Michael?
In my course, actually, I was using in terms of art. I used either artist as a subject who came to my course to share and talk, to me, I included that as an artistic experience because we don't get, I mean, during the past years, actually, we don't get to go out and see museum or performance as easily. And also, I did not want my students to spend money, and it could have been a more complicated bureaucratic process to get fun and for my students to get, the opportunity. But anyway, other than having artists come into my classes and meet with the students, where prior to that, I would introduce their works to my students, which includes either, video, songs, all kinds of artwork. Yes, those two individuals in my studies were not immigrants, but they are sorry, one is Asian immigrant, the other one is American-born Chinese person, American-born person of Chinese descent. So yes, those two artists are of Asian descent, but a lot of the materials that I use also included, say for example, I use this kind of overarching description, which is storytelling materials, including documentary, including movies, including short videos, anywhere, and those experiences are what I would ask if my students would consider as autistic or creative. And many of them would express that, those were creative, that those were artistic, and they would share how those different materials, either talk with the artist or documentary or movie, so on and so forth.